أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. جنات عدن يدخلونها ومن صلح من آبائهم وأزواجهم وذرياتهم وملائكة يدخلون عليهم من كل باب. سلام عليكم بما صبرتم فنعم عقبى الدار. والذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك لهم اللعنة ولهم سواء الدار. الله يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر وفرحوا بالحياة الدنيا وما الحياة الدنيا في الآخرة إلا متاع. ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه قل إن الله يضل من يشاء ويهدي إليه من أناب. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات طوبى لهم وحسن مآب. كذلك أرسلناك في أمة قد خلت من قبلها لتتلو عليهم الذين أوحينا إليك وهم يكفرون بالرحمن قل هو ربي لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وإليه متاب. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله الكريم. صلوات. Thank you all for attending today. Today's workshop is about challenges and solutions to being faithful in unfaithful lands. And we'll welcome Brother Sheikh Husain Modjtehedi. He studied in Qom for 6 years. We welcome with loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Dear sisters and brothers in Islam and in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In recent days and nights, as we've been keeping up with the various developments in the Muslim world and in the world at large, sometimes when we come across events that seem on the apparent to be bitter, many a times people become hopeless and a sense of despair takes them over. And this is because when they witness apparent loss in the form of the loss of life, or perhaps the loss of wealth, maybe the loss of opportunities, we think that there's something that we had that we have now given up in some way, shape, or form. And especially when those individuals that we lose in the ummah are individuals of high caliber and rank, such that it's not the case that if one were to go today, that literally tomorrow his replacement will come. Of course, we believe that when one leader goes, hundreds will take his place eventually and continue his path, because this path of the martyrs doesn't ever dry up or fade. But yes, in the sense that it's an immediate loss, it is. However, our outlook on these events and on these apparent losses is only tainted with despair and hopelessness when we see the reality to be this world. When we see our position in terms of who we are to be limited to right here. So yes, if my father were to pass away, or if I were to die myself, this is a tragedy. If I fall ill, this is a tragedy. Because I see all of these events, whether good or bad, to be determined by how I feel here, the make or break of who I am here. The person who has a tawheedi worldview, the one who examines and looks at the world in a way where his perspective is rooted in tawheed, recognizes that these losses that we incur from time to time in this world are that which make who we are, so that we develop and that we progress and so that we grow. So this person doesn't look at these apparent losses in this world to be losses at all. When we see the various assassinations that are taking place in various capitals of the Muslim world, while it affects us and we grieve, at the same time we recognize this is part of the growing process. This is part of the way that we are meant to reach the peak. Now, that was our little introduction. The topic that has been chosen for today is with regards to living a life of faith, or being faithful. And then at that, we bring it to our current scenario where we are in unfaithful lands, where the place that we are in isn't a place of faith at all. Not just Islam, it's not a place of faith. Before we break out and begin to discuss the challenges as well as the solutions to this issue that affects every one of us, we have to first understand what faith is. So for the brothers and sisters who either have their own pen and paper, not that one on the table, or if not, then your phone, it would be beneficial to take notes from now so that when we break out into the discussion, we would be on the same page of what it is that we're discussing, and that we're not discussing on different levels. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. As we just mentioned, man isn't this body. Man's reality isn't this physical, apparent, exterior existence. For example, all of the cells of your body, every single one of them, over a span of weeks, months, and eventually years, will completely change. As the days go by, the various cells of your body die off and they're replaced. And as the years go by, all of the cells of your body change. Meaning, from a physiological level, if you just look at who you are in terms of your biological personhood, you have changed multiple times throughout this lifetime of yours. Yes? Yet you don't seem to feel as though you are now a different person altogether. In the sense that if I were to say 5 years ago, have you totally changed as an individual? You are Muhammad 1 over there and now you're Muhammad 2? Is that the case? You would say, no, I don't feel like I've changed as an entire individual. But your physical existence has. And so we realize that in fact it's not this being that is the I. When I refer to myself isn't this. It's some other reality. Because this has changed. Yet I don't feel like I have. So my reality is something else. My reality is in fact my soul. Now, this soul of mine, when I take it to be the reality, I understand that the various events that take place in this world that affect me on a physical level aren't the make or break of who I am as a person. Rather, who I am as a person, the development that I'm looking for isn't a physical development necessarily, but rather a spiritual development. Me improving and developing as a person isn't contingent upon how my body develops and on what I look like or what I've acquired for my physical self, but rather it's a spiritual ascension that I'm looking for. Now, when I place myself in this world, what is it that I am looking to achieve? This ascension and development that we're talking about is all ambiguous. What is it that we're even talking about? Where is it that I want to reach? Clearly, like if it was that just the case that my body wanted to develop, then I'm looking to, for example, become stronger. I want to make sure that my bones don't deteriorate and that my muscles become stronger and that my internal organs are healthy. This is the development that I'm looking for. However, when we speak on a spiritual level, where is it that I'm seek to go? Naturally, our goal is perfection. Whatever the best top peak is for my existence, I'm seeking to reach that. For example, no one's going to come and say, my goal is to be mediocre. I would like to be fifth. If I can be first, I'll be first. The only reason why someone will choose to not be first is because they see their perfection in being something else. There was a guy, we were playing soccer just a month ago, and we had a sort of practice. And he had a chemistry exam the next day or in 2 days. And we found out while we were practicing that he has an exam, so he has to leave early. And we're like, why'd you even come? And he was like, no, I'm going to get like a 70. And we're like, yeah, so go home and study and you'll get a 90, 95, 100. He's like, nah, 70 is good. And so what you understand from that is not that the perfection is not something that's desired, but rather he saw perfection in something else. Perfection to him was play soccer for an hour, get a passing grade, and move on. I see my perfection in that extra relaxation that I get, in that amusement. Not that this person doesn't think 100% is perfection. Rather, he sees that subjectively, my perfection is somewhere else, and getting a 70 is actually part of my perfection. Make sense? Let's not go too deeply. This is my goal. Who determines what perfection is? Who determines what the goal is? Who determines how to get there? If it was myself who was going to determine my own perfection and the way to get there, we face a few problems. Number one, I don't know myself. I don't know my weaknesses. I don't know my strengths. I don't know where I came from. I don't know where I'm going. I don't even know where I am. So it's not me who will be able to determine what my own perfection is, nor how I'm going to get there. It's not within my capacity. If I asked you just for your own family, your own household, put together a set of laws to govern your home, the best laws. These laws are such that it will take everyone in the household towards perfection, everyone will succeed, and it will make sure whatever weaknesses and shortcomings and flaws that you have in and of yourself, these laws will keep you away from falling into those pits. Go ahead. I'll give you 10,000 years to put those laws together. So look, I don't know myself, let alone my own family members. As in, I don't know what my strengths and my weaknesses are. So I can't put that code of law together for myself. So then who should? Someone who knows the human being. And who knows the human being better than its creator? And so this brings us to the crux of our discussion. In order to be a believer, because our discussion is on being faithful, the person who's living a life of faith is someone who's on that trajectory towards his perfection. And that trajectory towards perfection is only the path that the creator of man has laid out for him. And that path that the creator has laid out for him is the Sharia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these boundaries and these borders that if we remain within them, we will necessarily reach the peak. However, if we exceed these bounds and transgress and go outside of these limits, we will not. Or perhaps we'll have to take a long, windy route, eventually somehow come back to the path and then reach the peak later. Now, we've said that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants all of us to reach perfection. Our perfection lies in our faith. Question now. When you're going to a particular destination, let's say you're going to Ottawa, you get on the 401 to go to Ottawa. You are considered to be a traveler going towards this city. However, if for a portion of your day you're going on the 401 West, or for a portion of your day you're visiting your friend and playing video games, for a portion of the day you're drinking coffee at an en route, for example, maybe you took a nap under a tree because it was a hot day. All of these chunks of the day, could you consider them to be part of your travel? Now someone will say, yes, I'm taking a break. The traveler is the one who is going from A to B. In all of these, the place where you're traveling backwards on the 401 West, the time where you're taking a nap, are you still a traveler? No, because being a traveler depends on you traveling. In the same way that being faithful depends on you living your faith. And in those bubbles that you create for yourself where you're not living the faith, in those moments you are not faithful. And so a believer is not someone who picks and chooses when he's going to be faithful, but rather his entire life, his lifestyle, the way he lives, the decisions he makes, the way he acts and the way he speaks, the relationships that he has with society, all depend on that which Allah has laid out for him. And in those places where he decides that, nah, I'm good, I'll do something else, I'll do something that I like that maybe Allah doesn't, at that point we recognize that there's a sickness in this person's faith. And so we've said all of that to say this point, that faith is necessarily holistic. Faith is something that encompasses your entire being, your entire life. You can't be selective with your faith. Someone who honestly, truly recognizes that Allah is the independent creator and that He is fully dependent on Him, and that Allah has laid out the path towards perfection, and that he is a traveler traveling towards it. That individual, in every aspect of his life, is bound by a duty to be faithful. The question that we want to pose today is that, is it possible to be faithful in a society that isn't? Why is this a question? So we said that we want to have a Islamic lifestyle. Our entire life is a life that revolves around that which Allah wants from us. We're doing that which Allah wants, and we're not doing that which Allah wants us to stay away from. But if the society is an unfaithful one, can you remain faithful? We pose this question for this reason. The focal point of society is that government that rules over it. There is a very special relationship that exists between the Imam and the Ummah, such that whoever the Imam is of that Ummah will dictate how that Ummah lives. Forget lives, how those people in that society think. Quick example. Quick example. When we were children, just looking around the room, I guess when I say we were children, we're looking on the same time period, or even before. If we were asked our opinion on this particular colorful group, perhaps every single one of us at that time would have responded in the same manner, with a look of disgust, maybe a frown, and rejected that notion and said, this is not something that I can accept. However, if you fast forward to the present day, the people of that young age group may answer very differently. So why is that? Why is it that at one time we would have, at least we did, think one way, but now the people of that same age group from our own communities, who share our same religious values, who live in similar households as we do, who attend the same masajid and Husainiyat that we do, why is it that those children of this generation may answer differently and actually not have a problem with those people and what they do? It's because the way that we think is necessarily governed by the people who rule over us. And so when there's a shift in the ideological or in the ideology of the governors of a society, there's also a shift in the ideology of the people that live in that society. So that puts us in a very tough position as people that claim to be believers when we're governed by disbelievers. When Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam is the Khalifa, we see that the entire Muslim Ummah is working in one direction on an inclined trajectory. However, when Muawiyah comes to power, we see that this is not the case. Islam has now been introduced to the people from the lens of the Bani Umayyah. And so the Muslims that are going to be produced from that era are going to look very different from the Muslims that were under the rule of Rasulullah or Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhim as-salam. So our issue is that our rulers here in this part of the world are not the ma'sumin and our society is not one of Islam. And so this relationship that exists between us and our rulers is a very special relationship, but also a very dangerous relationship. Because we're dealing with people who are going to make or break who we are, how we think, and how we act, while they and their philosophy is completely 180 degrees opposite to Islam. So, the question that we want to ask is, can we be faithful while living in unfaithful lands? What we're going to do is, we have five on each side. We have 5 tables. Each group sitting at each table will turn around and work with the table behind them, except for the last group, you stay forward. So you'll be 3 tables in the back and 2 in the front, 3 in the back, 2 in the front. And I'll assign a question for each table. Each of you will be given a position to argue. So it's not your own opinion. I'm giving you an opinion that you'll have to fight for, and you'll have to brainstorm for your position. The first 2 groups in the front of the sister side will be arguing that no, it's not possible to live as believers in a land of disbelief. The 3 groups wow, there's a lot of sisters in the back. Maybe I have to separate you guys. You guys keep your subject? Okay. Actually, no, it works. 2, and then the last table at the back will be a whole separate group. The 2 in the front will be, no, we cannot. The 2 in the middle will say, yes, we can live as believers, we can be Muslim in the West, we can live our faith in a correct way, in a holistic way. And the one in the back will also start to say, no, we cannot. Brothers, because you're less, we'll just split you the way we did. The brothers in the front will say, yes, we can live in the West, we can live in un-Islamic lands, and the ones in the back will say, no, we cannot. Got it? Last preamble, you guys can turn. Last preamble is this, that keep in mind when we say faith, we mean holistic faith. So your job that you take up, your position in your schooling, what you eat, your interactions in society, and there's no option to hide away from society, by the way. Your relationship with your family, all of these things have to be taken into consideration. That which Islam wants from us, is it possible in a holistic way that I can be Muslim in un-Islamic lands or no? Any questions about the question? Make sense? Bismillah.